All right, so we are live once again on a Saturday afternoon. As per normal, I'm gonna share this link to my Facebook page to let everyone know that I'm going live to answer questions for or so. So mostly in this Q&A, I will answer questions if there are any, or just probably ramble on about the usual type of thing that I find myself rambling on about. Lately, I've had to really restrain myself on just wanting to go crazy and buy like a lot of agarwood oils and a lot of natural perfume type stuff, just because I've been really into it lately, and I just want to keep buying and buying and buying more stuff, but have to exercise some restraint and not spend like thousands of dollars on oud and natural perfume stuff all the time. So right now I'm drinking a 1980s Chopware and burning some Burmese agarwood, which is pretty much all burnt out. You probably can't see it, but I'm gonna have to replace that in a minute. But let's see, looks like there's the first question, which is, what are some ways to improve memory and recalling of information? Well, it's one of those things that it's just a skill and a practical thing to do. So the best way to do it is to practice it. So there's simple exercises that you can do, either like laying in bed before you go to sleep at night, or just when you have some time to kill waiting for an appointment or whatever. You can just pick a moment in time, say how you got there, how you drove to this appointment. You could try to remember from start to finish every single detail and everything that happened in terms of how you felt, the sensations that you noticed, things that happened, and try to focus on all of the senses. And that's an easy way to start working on that. The other side of it is, just being able to actually listen and be present with things tends to help with recall. Because if you're trying to learn something or you're listening to something, but you're not really paying attention fully, or you're thinking about something else, or you're worriedly trying to remember it, then that's going to get in the way, and it's not really going to be very useful or effective. So there you go. Otherwise, I'm sure you could find lots of other exercises online, but at the end of the day, it comes down to just actually practicing it and doing it, and really honing and using that muscle. Next question is, I just want to ask, have you ever read Montauk Chia? Yeah, I read quite a lot of his books when I was first getting interested in these types of things. Not really a fan of his work, and I don't really recommend any of his exercises or techniques or teachings or anything at all whatsoever. But, to each their own. I've seen a lot of people injure themselves and make themselves worse off and very unwell from doing his stuff. But, that's my opinion. Not a fan. Do you know anything about chemical imbalance in the body and the brain? Could you be more specific in terms of what that actually means, or what particularly you are trying to ask or get me to answer? Because I'm not entirely sure what that question means, to be able to even answer it with any degree of specificity or accuracy. So perhaps if you could rephrase that, then I could hopefully maybe answer it. But I will say, pharmacology and biochemistry and neurochemistry is 100% not my strong suit or my interest. So if that's particularly what you're keen on finding out, then I don't think I'll be able to. How was this caused? Can you correct it? Well, causative factors could be vast. Can you correct it? I would say yeah, but it's going to take a lot of time and energy, and it's something you want to actually work with a professional with, like a licensed, certified, trained professional who specializes in that thing and actually does that thing for a living, I necessarily would not recommend just trying to like Dr. Google it yourself. Because if you're already labeling yourself as severely imbalanced, then your decision-making capacity is also probably imbalanced. So hence you need an authority or someone who has an objective opinion and skill and training and education to support that. But there's a lot of things that people can do for themselves, which is basically a lot of the things that I talk about on my channel that are just simple, easy stuff to help the body support itself and maintain homeostasis and help things to rebalance. So that is what I would say about that and what I would recommend. Which it's sometimes interesting to me how oftentimes people will the doctors always give psychotropic drugs. I would say keep looking and find other alternative practitioners, find a naturopath, find someone who's a bit more alternative and holistic, whether that is in person in your city or perhaps even virtually. There's a lot more people doing telemedicine or virtual medicine. Finding a naturopath or someone along those lines who is more skilled in those ways is what I would recommend. But yeah, it's not really my forte, nor is it my expertise or something that I particularly feel super confident or comfortable recommending on either way. What is a good book to learn on Taoism? I guess it depends on what you mean by what you're trying to learn. But honestly, nothing really comes to mind for me, so I would just recommend going on Amazon, finding some stuff. I don't really read books on these types of subjects or consume anything that's actually popular, so I'm not really up to date or well versed in those things. So honestly, there's just a certain aspect where basically everything that's commonly available is mostly not true. So at a certain point, it kind of doesn't matter. But also, if you're just trying to casually learn and get a general introduction, then you have to start with what's available and work your way through that. So just hit up Amazon, I guess, and look up something, because I mean, you can start learning about 5-element theory, you can start learning about yin-yang theory, you can learn about the 8 trigrams, you can learn about the I Ching, you can read the Lao Tzu or the Liezi or Zhuangzi or any of those Taoist, allegedly Taoist texts. So that's what I would suggest. So sorry, it's not particularly specific. I just don't read those things, or I'm not really well versed, and I don't really pay attention to that kind of world, so I can't really give a more specific type of opinion on that. But anyways, let's see if there's any other questions. Let me see here. I think I gotta get my agar wood back up to date here, because what I have on here is all burnt out. Let me see. So basically I have this little piece of wood, which you can barely see. It doesn't really look like much at all, but actually I'm gonna cut it up into smaller pieces and put it on top of my burner here, which I'm gonna give this a quick wipe. You can see my burner is starting to get kind of resonated and a little bit gunked up from all the wood that I've been burning on it. So I'm going to use my scissors and this little piece of wood and kind of just cut this up into little smaller pieces and then heat it up and I could probably heat that little itty bitty piece for quite a long time, which is what I'm doing now. And the smell is really good. Let me see. What's the cool new scroll on your wall? I'm not really going to talk about it, and honestly, I should have taken it down before I did this live stream, so I'm just going to pretend like it's not there, and then in the future, I will not have them on the live stream anymore. Let's see. Looks like there was a bigger question there, but someone just deleted their question. So let me see. I'm actually gonna do myself a favor and just take it down. There we go. Now it's just a plain, boring, uninspiring white wall. Let me see if I can improve my camera angle a little bit too. This Apple case is super janky. As cool as Apple claims that they are, sometimes their first gen products are really lacking in design and functionality, and this iPad case is 100% an example of that, where the viewing angle that they present you with this case is really kind of dumb. It's just like this, like you can only have it at this angle. It's like, come on, Apple, this is not, how about this? Or even like, give us some flexibility. But at least they fixed it with the next generation. So we'll give them props for that. What would you say your channel is all about? No clue. I would say it's all about whatever I feel like putting on at that moment, whatever that happens to be. There's a big emphasis on health, obviously, and for people trying to perhaps make a more positive change or adjustment to their lifestyle to thereby hopefully improve their quality of life or minimize suffering in some capacity or can increase their enjoyment. But otherwise, I don't really know. I think also maybe you were the person that commented recently to give like a top list of my most recommended videos, and honestly, I have no clue. I would say I couldn't answer that or couldn't really do that because I don't really remember. I mean, I think there's 650 plus videos on my channel. I don't really remember, but if I scroll through, I can remember kind of what they're about, but it's been so many years, and so honestly, you're kind of just on your own. It's really not that hard to just scroll through and find titles that jump out or appeal to you. There's a certain element of self-investment and self-guidance that is useful, let's say. Do you have any positive experiences with bupleurum? Yeah, bupleurum is a great herb. Definitely should not be consumed alone or standalone. Should be used in a formula primarily. So, you know, there's pretty famous formulas called Xiaoyaosan or Xiaochaihutang that feature bupleurum quite heavily. And I've taken both of those formulas and noticed positive results. For people who have liver qi stagnation, it can be a really great herb, especially in those formulas. So I would highly recommend making sure you're using those formulas if you're using that herb. Some herbs are a bit more okay to do standalone, others are not. And this is one of the ones that is not. Which leads me to another interesting thing that I see quite a lot in the industry, which is, in general, people not really knowing much about herbs. Or like they follow this approach of, let's say I want like a men's libido formula or something. So what they do is they just Google and find every herb that supports that, and they just throw them all together in a formula. And that makes literally no sense. And sure, might produce some kind of short-term stimulation, and it sounds cool, but in general doesn't is just isn't good. I don't think it's that good for people, and it doesn't really show much of a expertise with herbs. But that's quite commonly what a lot of people are doing. And another example of that is people selling standalone single herbs for things that typically are not really in that category. Let's see. Is there a difference between the reishi capsules and reishi powders? I notice a difference, but maybe that's just me. Are you talking about on my website specifically, or just in general reishi capsules versus reishi powders? Because if you're talking about the stuff on my website, it is literally the exact same powder. One is just put into capsules, one is just not. But it is the exact same product from the same supplier with the same everything. So it might just be, I mean, it could be just taking them in different ways if it yields a different effect. But in all honesty, it's the exact same thing, just in capsules versus loose. Same thing with the Hushawu capsules. Exact same powder, just in capsules or not. That's exactly it. Which is kind of leads me to another thing that I'll get into, which is I had an exchange with a client recently, and over the years there's been maybe a couple people that have brought this up, but like I think in 2012 or something, I made a video about Hushawu, and I had a batch of that product that was quite dark, and then some of the batches are that dark, some are a bit lighter, some variation. It kind of depends, because we're talking about a natural product with variations in harvest, variations in batch, variations in raw materials, what's available seasonally, etc. So on the extreme, I've had some complete wackos be on Amazon, be like, oh, Brandon used to sell better quality herbs, but now he's cutting his Hushawu with celery powder. He's a total scammer. And I'm just like, total insanity. But I think we've already made fun of this guy on previous live streams. But then on the other extreme, people just being like, oh, are you sure this is the same thing? I think it's different, or I think you mixed up your batch, or this or that. But literally, I've been working with the same suppliers, using the same processes for like 10 years. Like, none of it's changed. It's all the same. But there is obviously variability, because the raw material that was available in 2012, let's say May 2012, is not the same raw material that's available in May 2019. Why? Because it's a natural plant from the ground, so there's variation and variability. And this is sometimes something that confuses people, which is, somewhat understandable, because people have better things to do, hopefully, than worry about these types of details. But it's just something that I often will have to explain to people. And just the reality of the situation is, I've been working with these same suppliers for a decade, doing third-party testing on every batch all the time, meaning start, middle, and end. So raw material is third-party tested before it's even extracted, just because part of the sourcing process is making sure it's clean and it meets the standards. Okay, it does that. Even prior to extraction, testing again. After extraction, test to make sure everything's okay, and then prior to packaging, test make sure everything's okay. And that is all just normal, standard procedure, and has been for, like I said, like a decade. So that's just sort of how I do things and how I've always done things. So it's just sometimes something I had to explain to people, but then also this client mentioned that might be interesting for people to know, or might be a a good USP, let's say. Yeah, we'll see. Let's see, next question. Has there been any progress with the seller that you were eventually going to have in Europe with their products? I don't think there was a seller. I think what I meant was myself, or opening a different branch like Hyperion.eu or whatever, wherever I incorporate. So there hasn't been any progress on that, because honestly I was pretty much on retreat the entire month of July and partially the end of June, and just been recovering so far. So I'm just still catching up, and I need to grow, my main operations first before I can think about branching out into more of like a European type thing. But I think it's a good idea, and I will do it probably at some point. But it'll just be me. I won't use another seller or anything like that. It'll just be my own, another brand basically. Did you check out the new Tool song? I did not. Have not listened to it. Honestly, I haven't listened to much music at all in the last probably 4 or 5 months. To me, I might listen to like a few songs a week, maybe. So yeah, so I haven't really been up to date. Can zeolite bind to chromium? I don't know, and I guess it depends on particularly what you mean. Meaning like chromium that you consume from like your diet. Is the zeolite going to bind to like your naturally occurring nutrients? I don't know off the top of my head. Have to do more research or talk to my suppliers about that, which unfortunately the zeolite has been out of stock for a little bit, and that is partially because, that's actually completely because my supplier is totally out of stock, and they've been back ordered for like 2 weeks. So my order hence is also back ordered, because they said their sales increased like 300% last year. So, and I think partially a part of that was to do with me starting to sell it, because I've sold a decent amount of it because I think it's a great product and I've been quite enjoying it. So I consume it myself on a fairly regular basis, and I really like that. I noticed that ant powder on Hyperion has been out of stock for a while. Do you know when you'll restock? I think it is scheduled to be done with production on like the 26th of August. So it should be back in stock by the end of the month, basically, is what that's looking like. It's already at my packaging facility. It's just scheduled to be packed, so I'm just waiting on that. But I was out of stock on it for a while because I wasn't a fan of basically those types of products, and it didn't sell that well as compared to other things. But then I got a sample of my own product, and then I was like, dude, this ant is really good. Like, this is really good ant. I really had forgotten how good it was. So then that, and after one client in particular has been like on me, like every week or two, sending me an email for the past couple of months, being like, are you gonna get it back? When are you gonna get it back? When are you gonna get it back? And I was finally like, all right, dude, I'll get it back. So I'll be carrying that again. And like I said, should be by the end of the month. And then from then on, I'll just carry it again as like a normal, regular product. And partially the other part of the video is I have 5 products queued up that I'll be launching sometime in the next probably 6 weeks. 2 of them will be probably launching in the next few weeks, and they are the 2 most potent herbal formulas that I've ever consumed or found for basically calming the mind, reducing anxiety, reducing irritability, reducing irritation, also improving sleep, and generally helping people just chill out and feel more centered and balanced. So it's really, really, really effective. And I've been letting basically everyone that I've let try it usually immediately wants to buy some, or is completely blown away at how strong and effective it is from just one dosage, and pretty much within the first few minutes. So a lot of people struggle with sleep, a lot of people struggle with anxiety or irritability or inability to focus. All these things, it really, really helps. And it's really, really quite supportive. And then also there's another formula that's along those lines, but more for like depression or emotional heaviness or emotional kind of gunk. So those two things together, I think, can really help people's mental and emotional health, as well as helping just sleep and people to be able to actually chill out, relax, focus, be calm, be grounded, because those are big problems for a lot of people. So those are the first two that will be queued up. That's all I can say about them. The third product I can reveal openly, which is basically, it's going to be a pure sandalwood oil, which is hydrodistillation of pure Mysore sandalwood, which is like really, 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 really good. Oh, it's definitely not CBD or hemp oil. It has nothing to do with either of those products. It's basically these traditional, this sandalwood oil is incredible. It's like a standalone perfume. And then even when you put it on, it opens up and it blooms and blossoms out, and then the smell will last on your skin or your clothes for like quite a long time. So that's the third product. The other two I can't really talk about as of yet, but they are new and unique, and no one's really selling them, no one's really talking about them, and they're not really well known whatsoever yet, but I think they will be, and I'm pretty excited to be bringing it out and being the first person or one of the first people to really bring it out and hopefully try to make it more well known and established, because I think it's a really beneficial and a useful thing. So yeah, I think that's the 5 products total. But then the sandalwood, I think I'll price it at like $29 for this is a 1 ml bottle. And I've had this for 2-3 months, and this is all that I've used, and I've used on a regular basis. So a little bit goes a long way, and it lasts a long time. So I think, yeah, it'd be like $29 for a 1 gram bottle. So I think people will definitely like it. And this is another thing that people can use to center, stabilize, calm, ground, and also just enjoy and really get a lot out of. If you develop your ability to really meditate and listen to things, then these things can add a lot of value and really contribute quite a lot. And I'm connected directly with the supplier, directly with the manufacturer, hence I'm able to get the good price and know that the quality is what we say it is. So firstly, I was just stoked to to get it for myself. And then the other thing is this agarwood, which I've sold maybe 15 bottles of it privately, just on an email basis. But I don't think I'll do it publicly on the website, just because it's so expensive and precious that I don't want it to get lost or damaged in any way, because this is a 2 gram bottle, and I think I'll probably retail it for like 200 or probably like 200 or 215 or something like that. I think I did a private pre-launch like thing with people where it was 175 for 2 grams, which is an insane deal for this caliber of oil. And the smell was like insane. So I'll be doing another order for that stuff soon. So if you're at all interested and want to get some agarwood, I would recommend emailing ASAP. And you can also get it for that pre-launch, like 175 price. Let's see, there's some questions. Let me scroll up. still use agarwood. Yeah, 100% all day, every day. I got some heating up right now on the burner, which I need to turn back on. So yeah, I mean, I think just at present, I'm heating some agarwood on the burner, and I think I have 2 or 3 types on right now. I have a Thai cultivated agarwood just on my wrists, and then I have a 2001 distillation of Malaysian wood on here, and then here I have an attar, which is basically a natural perfume. I think this is called Spirit of Japan, which has like agarwood and sandalwood, and basically just what you think of as Japanese incense, but an amazing oil that's really quite strong. So yes, I have all of those on, plus I'm heating it. And I'm also typically would burn some incense if I'm training or practicing or something. So it's definitely something I'm very, very much into. And I'm also spending too many hours a day online reading about it or just trying to buy more. It's bad news. In one of your videos, you expressed frustration with people. Are you frustrated with people? I'm having trouble in that regard. No, I don't really feel that way anymore. I think that was just a phase. Unfortunately, I don't feel that way anymore. So, yeah. It's not necessarily a very healthy or satisfying way to live, but sometimes you got to go through that phase to get to the next one. So, let me see here. What I think I gotta scroll up. 6 major herb, or maybe bupleurum and peony. I think in terms of that bupleurum situation, it depends on what your actual diagnosis is, what your actual situation is, determining on what's going to be the best formula. Something like Shao Chai Hu Tong is way more well tolerated because it's partial like moving sort of more medicinal herbs and part tonics. So Shao Chai Hu Tong is probably a better way to go, but it's hard to say specifically because we don't really know what your actual situation or desire is. Could you maybe share some of your experiences with work and health balance? Asking from a place where my business has been taking most of my awake time. I think that's kind of normal. And we should also understand that health and balance is an extremely relative thing, because if you're creating a new project or you're working on something that is very engaging or passionate, like a new business, then probably your balance is going to be a bit distorted as compared to someone who's just working a 9 to 5 or working a regular job, or someone whose business is already quite stabilized. It just is a different phase. So to me, sometimes you just have to go through that and do it. On the flip side, there is another value in looking at what are the most important things we want to accomplish, and then looking at our actions, and do our actions connect and lead to the most important things we want to accomplish. Then looking at our actions and finding things we can completely eliminate, finding things that we can at least minimize, finding things that we can outsource or delegate, or finding things that are perhaps just a complete waste of time in terms of our actual goal and what we're trying to accomplish. And that's a really useful way to go about it. And also looking at our systems. Do we have good systems in place of staying organized and staying focused? So you should, I would say, look at both of those things, because sometimes people are more busy than they need to be because their systems aren't that good, or they're scattered, or they're doing too many actions which aren't connected or related to their actual goals, or they're doing things that would be better off to be outsourced or delegated, or any type of variation in that gray area. So those are all important things to look at and to scrutinize. Also, at a certain point, realizing if and when we are really sacrificing our health or pushing too far. Because if you have your own business, sometimes it's easy to push too far, where like sometimes it's better off if you just step away, take a break, come back later, versus if you're like, oh, I have to do this, I have to push through, I have to do it, then you end up your results and your productivity is like a massive diminishing returns, and your stress levels and the way you're feeling is just going way up. So in that sense, sometimes it's better to just step back and pause and let things breathe a little bit. So it's a matter of, I think, organizing your tasks and goals and objectives, and organizing your actions and time accordingly. So those are some of my thoughts on those things, but also realizing that balance it's a relative thing. I mean, in all honesty, basically, I think most things, anything that's that worth accomplishing is typically not done in a balanced way. Meaning, like, people who become really good at, let's say, playing a musical instrument, they're probably pretty extreme in their thought and their approach and their actions, but because they're trying to do something extreme. So sometimes balance is an excuse for mediocrity, or an excuse for procrastination or not doing things. But like, if someone's an entrepreneur, they're trying to do something new or crazy, then it's probably going to require some type of extreme investment of time and energy. So those are all things to consider. And I would say one thing to eliminate is like all the like fluffy health gurus on YouTube and all that nonsense. That could all pretty much be eliminated, and spend that time on more relevant tasks. Let's see. When will the new herbal products be available? The first two that I mentioned, the capsules, should be available in the next couple of weeks. I should have some bottles at my place, or at here, like next week, so I can do some more testing, get some product photography, and do some videos. And then the week after, I'll have it shipped, or I'll have another order shipped to my warehouse, and then I can get it up on the website. So it should be within a couple of weeks. Shouldn't take too long. And I'll be making videos and sending out emails and promoting it, so everyone will know that it's available, and like what it is, what it does, what the benefits are, how to take it, you know, all the things that people need to know. And then the other ones will be within 6 to 8 weeks, depending on when I get things going, because usually it's like takes at least 3 to 4 weeks for me to order, for it to get packed, and then for it to get to fulfillment. That can sometimes take a while depending on how busy they are, what time of year it is and stuff. Can you source some pure raw musk deer gland juice? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could. I've not really used it or experimented with it, and it's quite expensive. And the ethics of it are, I guess, are a whole other thing in terms of how it's sourced and whatever, but it's not an aromatic or a botanical that I've gotten into just yet, because I'm already too screwed with agarwood and sandalwood. In your earlier videos, you said that you like the teachings of Alan Watts, but in your more recent videos, you have said that his teachings are no good. What made you change your mind? Well, I think it just depends on what subject that we're talking about. Just as a general philosopher, general entertainer, I think people could learn a lot and benefit from listening to his stuff. And then even as just a basic introduction to Asian philosophy and ideas, it can be fine. Even though all of his stuff about Asian philosophy is not correct. And what made me realize and understand all of this was actually studying with people who are actually skilled in those traditions, have expertise in those traditions, and then realizing I had to completely unlearn and forget all of that nonsense that I had picked up from him and all of the other popular figures, because it was all completely incorrect. So yeah, but at the same time, that's me, and I don't think that's necessarily relevant or useful to everyone else, because people would probably people will have their own life path and their own things, so they're not going to be where I am or end up doing what I'm doing. So it's actually fine and it's actually okay. So that's why I changed my mind. But I think for those reasons that I listed, if you just want a general intro or be entertained, or maybe learn about some new ideas or learn to think in different ways, then rock it out. But ultimately, I wouldn't say it's anything more than that, in my opinion. Why is it hard to keep focus? Good question. It's a kind of a broad, big question. So maybe in one sense, if you don't actually care about it, or you're not interested, then it can be hard to keep focus. If you actually are interested and you care and you're drawn to a certain thing, then it's much easier to actually focus, in my opinion anyways. So beyond a more specific question, I think that's about as general as I can be, and also that's learning and understanding that it's just a muscle and it's a skill. So if you never practice it, you never do it, you're spending your whole life fractured and multi-focused on tons of different things, then of course that's what your mind is going to get shaped into. Unless you can actually find something to focus on and dial into, which I think is a really beneficial thing. Whether it's learning a language, learning an instrument, learning some new skill or some endeavor, being able to dive in and focus on it for periods of time on a regular basis is really useful and helpful, and a really great thing to add into our lives for a great source of enrichment. Do you watch anime/read manga? If so, what do you like the most? I don't watch anime or read manga, so I unfortunately cannot make any recommendations. I apologize. Sorry if this has been answered before. How did you get into all this herb stuff? Were you having problems with your own body that needed help? Yeah, I mean, at the time, I think in like 2004 or 5 or something, I think I was just getting interested in meditation and yoga and stuff, and was wanting to find ways to enhance that, and then discovered reishi mushroom and goji berry and that type of thing, and found that there's these whole group of herbs and foods that I could consume that would be supportive and beneficial for health over the long term in a much more general sense, and things that I could use to support meditation in my yoga practice. So that was kind of the impetus and what kickstarted a lot of the stuff. So hopefully that answers that question. But also, I think at that time I was in school, I was in college, and coming out of a really dark phase psychologically where I was quite angry and quite depressed. And things like reishi and some of the other things were very beneficial and helpful for me to learn to focus, to, I think, actually increase my intelligence and being able to move forward in a more healthy and empowered way. Have you ever thought about being an acupuncturist? I have entertained the idea on a few occasions, but there's just no way. Number one, going to school in America is too expensive, and I don't really believe in the curriculum. I just don't think I have the patience or the time or energy to sit through that, or to go in debt anywhere from $70,000 to $110,000. And I don't have any desire to treat people on that way on a regular basis. sounds like a big energy drain, and I would just much rather do other things with my time and energy. So yeah, that is my answer for that. Do you drink any pour that is not your own? What are you drinking now, by the way? Yeah, I drink plenty of teas that are not my own as I'm working through my collection. Like I have some good shungs and some other teas that are not my own, but are still pretty decent. But I would say the vast majority of what I drink is from my own sourcing, from my own supplier, and things that I probably really will sell for myself. Just because for what I want, that my source and the stuff that I get is just what I want, and the quality's there, and the price is superior. So the quality, the price, and the availability is superior to everything else. So of course, that's kind of where I default to. But if I want to branch out of that category, then... But actually, I think my supplier has a lot of young shungs and a lot of other teas that I haven't tried yet. So I might eventually reach that point where I don't drink anything that it's not from my own source. I also probably have some new teas that I'll be releasing. So that's maybe like 8 new products, but I'll talk about those another time. Any advice for impulsive behavior / sex addiction? I heard lifting weights around 5 a.m. can help cut through the crap. Thoughts? I don't think I'd really recommend lifting weights at 5 a.m. I'm not sure exactly how that will help or be useful. I would say on a larger scale, what is helpful and useful is to like get a life. Because I'm assuming that chronic impulsive behavior, sex addiction is probably porn or masturbation related. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just what I'm assuming and going off of. So please tell me if that's not the case. So in my opinion, what is useful is get a life, meaning find something that we're actually interested in and passionate about that gives our life meaning. Find some way of contributing and sharing and helping other people beyond ourselves for compensation or not. Forming more healthy, rewarding relationships, both friendship or romantic or whatever. And then if working up the scale, actually getting a healthy, rewarding romantic relationship is useful. So I think, and on a larger scale, those are really helpful. And if it is a real addiction, then I think getting help or seeing an actual therapist about it is probably useful as well. But ultimately, I think the larger issue is like getting a life, doing the things that I talked about, because if those are in place and those are outlets, then there's going to be way less time and energy to actually engage in those less than ideal behaviors. I realize what I'm saying is not like a quick, easy fix. It's not like 3 easy steps or do this simple hack to change the thing, but it's difficult generally for a reason, because we probably need to grow and need to learn things and need to develop as a human being. So of course that's going to be a bit difficult. It's going to take time and energy, but through that journey of growing and discovery, you can develop other traits which are useful and beneficial, which I think are very good. Also getting some sort of creative outlet, whether that's a musical instrument or painting or writing or some type of hobby, is generally useful. But that's what I would say in terms of that whole thing. which, correct me if I'm wrong in my assumptions about that situation, and I can change my thoughts on it, but I feel like that's probably the case. Just because I can't tell you over the years how many emails or inquiries I've gotten from young men who either masturbate addictively or have masturbated addictively, and it's a real problem these days. But in general, I think it comes down to people having oftentimes nothing better to do, no real purpose, not good relationships, obviously an imbalanced lifestyle, and generally like a greater purpose or some reason for doing things, and a real desire to actually kind of grow up and develop more as a man, which is a whole other subject in and of itself. And there's also the counter response, or the response to this, which is generally the whole no-fap movement, or even on a further extreme, men going their own way, all that type of thing, which is just more extreme, kind of distorted behaviors, which personally I don't have an interest in and I don't think are functional, but I can see the benefit for some people short term, because sometimes the best way is just to go cold turkey for some people. But the thing is people just take this kind of distorted behavior, they flip it to another distorted behavior, and then add another level of complexity, meaning like, oh, now I'm healthy because now I'm no fap. So it's like, well, you had this addictive distortion, so now you're still identified with the addictive distortion, but the fact is that you don't do it. So now that's your new identity, is that you don't do this thing. So your whole life is lived in reaction to the thing that you don't do, which is still being controlled by the thing that you don't do, which means you're actually still doing it because you're controlled by it, because it's your self-image. So it doesn't really make any sense. But I also understand it's a process, it's a journey that people have to go through sometimes. So that's what I would say about that. It's a rather big subject, and it's something that I have thought about quite a lot in and of myself, just because obviously I'm in that demographic of young men. Well, I guess I'm not that young anymore, but I used to be. A lot of scientists don't believe Epsom salt works. I don't know what to believe. I've tried it, but don't know if it was just the warm water that relaxed me. What do you say to the skepticism? To me, it just sounds really dumb. Like, of all the things to be skeptical about, people are like, oh, Epsom salts doesn't work. It's like, how would it not work? So what you're saying is, if there's stuff in the water, and then you're in the water, somehow there is no exchange between the water and your skin and your body, is what we're saying. So following that logic, let's fill up a bath and then pour, I don't know, gasoline in there. Is that not going to affect your skin and your body? Is there not going to be some exchange? If following the logic that it doesn't work, then why would bathing in toxic water matter at all? Because there's no exchange. Like, it just is so, makes no sense. But I also don't know specifically what claim they are skeptical about. You know, maybe someone said taking an Epsom salt bath will boost your HGH by 300% over the course of 2 days. Maybe they were like, that claim is not real. So then, of course, I can agree with that, because that's a bit absurd. But just saying that an Epsom salt bath isn't actually relaxing for people, it doesn't have health benefits, is just dumb, in my opinion. And also, it's just, I think, been refuted a lot from the whole line of people who do the magnesium chloride baths and the magnesium chloride soaks. Those people were like way into it, and it clearly is beneficial. So at the end of the day, we're talking about something that costs like $3-4, and you can take. The other thing it is, I think, people, when they do their Epsom salt baths, they do it in kind of a silly way. So like, put a cup in. Oh, I'm doing a salt bath, I'm gonna put in a cup. Of course, it's not really going to do much. What you should be doing is put in like a bag or two, then see how you feel. And people are like, wait, you can do that? It's like, yeah, a bag's like $3-4. Put in 2 bags, actually have an effect, then talk. So that's my opinion. Let's see. By focus, I meant intentional focus. Either way, years ago, I used to meditate to become more self-aware. As the time passed, I became less satisfied with my meditation and needed more time to meditate to get to that state of meditation. I would say in general, it just sounds like anxiety. But I don't know. I don't really want to get into that whole thing, because I've talked about it in my other videos about meditation and about spirituality. So I would just look at those videos and that will sum up my views on the subject. So if you scroll back on my channel, there should be a video about meditation, and then also there's 2 videos, what is spirituality, another one is like, what is meditation. I would just watch those, because otherwise I don't really want to get into that whole can of worms. Is there anything better or similar to gynostemma? My response would be, in terms of what, and what do you mean specifically? Because if we're just talking like a general adaptogen that tastes good, is economical, easy to use, you can drink all day long, I don't think there's really anything better for those qualifications than gynostemma. If we start talking about something specific, then maybe, but that's my answer. I think gynostemma is pretty top notch. Let's see. Have you come across Tobias Lars? If so, what do you think of his teachings? Never heard of him, but I'll do a quick Google search right now just to see. I also don't follow these types of people online. And I don't really have high opinions or any things to, or generally good things to say about these types of people. And yeah, I'm looking at the YouTube channel. Yeah. I'll just be polite and say I don't really have anything positive to say about it based on my quick scan. So I'll just leave it at that. You mentioned becoming a man. Any thought on what manhood means? Bonus for referencing other thinkers or books. Yeah, I don't really know. Specific definition off the top of my head. I think there's a certain degree of emotional maturity, a certain degree of self-assuredness, and getting your life sort of stabilized in a good way that has a certain degree of it. It's a really weird time we live in now, where there's quite a lot of just adult children, which maybe that's the way it's always been. I don't know. I wasn't alive then, but right now it just seems, at least where I live, I just look out and I'm like, these are all people who are like little kids. Like everyone's playing makeup, or everyone's playing dress up and make believe, and they're playing all these little things. So I'm playing spiritual guy, or I'm playing new age witchy wild woman, whatever. I'm just like, this is just childish fantasy type stuff, but they don't really have any economic independence or financial independence or time independence or thought independence or any of these really developed characteristics that I personally find valuable and useful in my life. And I'm always constantly trying to work on and become better at, because the thing is our education system does not really prepare us very well at all. It actually hinders us in a lot of ways, I think. Depending on our family situation or our upbringing, sometimes people aren't given the best examples or the best guidance moving forward. So then it's just a lot of unlearning and trying to figure out things for ourselves based on that. But if we're one of these people that's lucky to have good role models, good influences, then that can be very useful if we can actually utilize the information we were given. But I think unfortunately a lot of people aren't in that situation. So a lot of people are still stuck in this kind of juvenile way of living. But I think on a larger scale, that is how a lot of people function, and how we're just conditioned. But I also am not a fan of like men's groups. There's like one of them in particular that's the most famous. I can't remember what it is, but some guy tried to invite me to it many years ago. It was just real creepy. Especially these like spiritual new agey dudes that are doing like men's groups and men's whatever. It's just real creepy, and it's really a turnoff to me personally. I think honestly, people just way overdo it and way miss the point and way overcomplicate things. Because really the fact of the matter is simple. In your life, you have decisions to make. So you learn to make different decisions. That's it. You don't need to go to groups and like connect with brothers and embrace manhood or divine masculinity or any of this other psychotic nonsense. It is really unnecessary and counterproductive. Because quite a lot of these dudes that I see that go to these groups are still little playing makeup and make-believe. Hence the titles and the propaganda for these things. Like something that you probably need to figure out for yourself. And this is something that I think is very useful and beneficial in our modern times that I think people are not really hip to. And that is, some things you just don't talk about with other people. Some things are private matters. Some things are personal matters that we do for ourselves, with ourselves, and we don't have to broadcast to the world. We don't have to virtue signal or whatever nonsense people are doing and broadcasting it. We don't need social validation from a groupthink mentality. It's just something that is personal to us, for us, that we do for ourselves, and the results show up in our life, period. The manifestations, the results, or the validation becomes our life, not getting a pat on the back from a bunch of random dudes with like top knots and side shaves and like all this type of crazy shit people are into. Oh, it was like Mankind Project. I think that's what it was. Which that shit was just really creepy to me. It's like, let's go on a retreat in the woods and share our feelings together in a circle. I'm like, how about we don't do that? And instead, I'll just learn to make different decisions in my life and change my conduct. The other side of it is I think there's a big cultural meme that's happening right now, which is having actual integrity, being a reliable, stable, solid person with defined boundaries, defined opinions and views, and defined sense of self is kind of like really frowned upon. Or it's presented in distorted ways where if you think that way, you're some kind of like right-wing wacko. But at the same time, you have the other extreme, which is the complete opposite, which I won't get into, but I think in reality, those characteristics are useful and beneficial, and obviously, clearly, a work in progress. But it's something that I learned to see quite a lot in when I was talking to a lot of men and women about their dating lives, from when I was thinking about doing a dating course, which I have completely mapped out, but I just haven't recorded it yet. And there was a big disconnect that I was seeing where I was talking to a few guys and they were like, I really want a woman who is like, she's like stable, she has a relationship with God, she has faith, she has morals and values and integrity and all these things. But then the guy's like, oh, but I just want like a physical connection, I just want like, I don't want all these extra things in there. I'm like, so basically you just want a fuck buddy or a friends with benefits type situation. It's like, yeah, kind of, but I'm totally upfront about it. So I'm being in integrity and I'm being honest and masculine and whatever. And I'm like, dude, your shit makes no sense. Like, your actions are not a match for the thing that you think you want. So of course you're going to be frustrated because your actions and your approach are contradicting your outcome completely. And you're lying to yourself about it in the process, and lying to me and being straight a little bit dishonest. So I saw that quite a lot in a lot of people. So, and then another thing was, I had another person who was saying kind of the same thing. They want this type of woman, and then they're on a date with them and they're frustrated because it's not going anywhere, because they've been on 2 dates and hasn't gotten super physical or super escalated yet. And it's like, well, what do you expect? Like, do you want to date this like kind of floozy, loose, no boundaries, no sense of self, kind of hippie, new agey woman that you're usually attracted to, who you can hook up with within 2 hours of meeting them, no questions asked, no attachments or whatever? If you're expecting that result, then you're going to have to stay with this type of person. If you want a different result, then you're going to have to change sort of your approach and your mindset and realize that it's a different ecosystem you're entering into. So these are just different levels of complexity and contradiction that people are really operating in. So I think it's useful to actually get clear on what we want and then what that actually means, and then examine if our actions are actually like a match for those things. So it's really quite simple. It doesn't take a lot of time to figure out. You can just sit down with a piece of paper and map it out in like 5-10 minutes. Don't have to do expensive retreats or get hugs from a bunch of dudes or whatever the hell people are into. It's really pretty straightforward, and it's a personal, private process that you don't need to advertise or tell people about, because it's none of their fucking business. So hopefully that gives some type of value or context on that question. Let me see. Do you think cumulative supplementation of hemp oil can eventually have a slightly toxic effect similar to that of high THC cannabis? Depends on what you mean by hemp oil. Do you mean hemp seed oil like for nutrition? Do you mean CBD hemp oil from industrial hemp? But I don't think it would be a slightly toxic effect similar to that of high THC, because it's not high THC cannabis, so the effect probably won't be similar, especially if you're not smoking it. That's the whole other thing. If your people are smoking, they're vaporizing oily plant material in their mucous membranes, which of course is problematic. Let me see. Do you still follow Michael Tessarian's work? No, I haven't really looked at any of his stuff since probably like 2014. At a certain point, I just felt like he was kind of a miserable, unhappy, pessimistic person. Although super intelligent, and for a period of time had a lot of interesting things to contribute, at least intellectually, but I don't really consider myself an intellectual anymore, so I don't really follow intellectuals or consume any of their content or material. And I also just don't see the point or value in going down those rabbit holes in any type of pragmatic, objective, tangible way, so hence don't follow any of that type of stuff anymore. What made you want to live in Oregon? Do you think it's generally healthier to be in a major city or a small town type of environment? I think it's generally healthier depending on your personal preference. If you prefer a certain type of environment, then for you that will be healthier. That's pretty much in general what it comes down to. Obviously, barring an extremely toxic environment, sure, but in general, it's just kind of people's personal preference and what they want to do with their lifestyle, what types of interests and activities they want to participate in. Like, for example, people will think like, oh, I feel so much better in the woods. Like, oh, the energy here is so much better and I feel so much more at peace and stable and calm within myself. But in reality, they're not feeling the energy, they're just feeling their personal preference and bias. Because there's plenty of other people who, if you put in that situation, are going to feel the opposite and are going to feel really upset and distraught because they don't like it. So that's generally what I would say, just someone's personal preference. To me, I'm not totally sure yet what I prefer. Obviously, there's pros and cons either way, but for this point in my life, there's certain things here that I prefer, but I do notice I tend to feel a bit better where it's a bit more calm, I think. But also, on the flip side, my opinion is to just become strong enough internally that it doesn't really matter where you are, that you feel kind of the same. Whether you're in the forest or on the subway with 1,000 people, you still feel just as calm and centered and stable. To me, that's more appealing and valuable than being sort of a bubble boy about everything. So, yeah, to me, that's a more interesting, longer term goal. Just wondering, why is vaporizing or atomizing organic herb bad for the mucous membranes in the lungs? Well, I said smoking. So taking a lighter or a torch and vape and like smoking plant material, that's obviously bad, which I think is kind of obvious. I don't know if I need to really explain why that's bad. But if you're talking about vaporizing or atomizing or whatever that is, obviously that's far less damaging than smoking something. But at the same time, depending on what that is, it can actually be more damaging because the concentration and the penetration can be much higher. So actually you can get a much stronger effect and delivery of the chemicals. So in some ways it can be worse. But in general, I think it's kind of obvious that smoking something is not good for your lungs, whether that's a plant material or vaporizing or whatever. I think that's kind of self-evidently not a positive thing to be doing characteristically or regularly over the long term. What do you think of systemic enzymes? I think systemic, does that mean like metabolic enzymes or basically just like full system enzymes? But I think in general, enzyme therapy can be useful and helpful if people are trying to clear up inflammation or clear up old injuries or scar tissue or help the body break down excess proteins. Or perhaps if someone is just having digestive issues, they need some support or a boost, I think enzymes can be helpful. Enzymes are something I've used quite a lot over the years and I think can be helpful and useful if a person is in a situation where they really could need that. If they're dealing with a lot of inflammation or what I would say in a larger term, people can, if they get their lymphatic system healthier, get the fluids in their body actually moving effectively and efficiently, then generally inflammation load will go down a lot and the body will be able to deal with things in a much more efficient way. Because I think a lot of times people get clogged because literally their fluids don't move, their lymphatic system is clogged. So that's a very useful thing to look at as well. So yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up soon. It's been about an hour and it's about 3 p.m. here and I need to get some lunch before it gets too late. So if there's any last questions, get them in. Otherwise, I'll have to get out of here. What was the name of that one movement guy you said help you with some of your joint problems? I don't remember. But I would say if you want like a bodywork modality, look up fascial stretch therapy or FST. Specifically exactly that name. There's lots of myofascial release or stretch therapy and all this stuff that's out, but it's specifically this brand and this line of people can be a very useful bodywork modality. Otherwise, there's also controlled articulated rotations cars. If you look up those things, you can find controlled articulated rotations for various joints. That can also be very useful and beneficial. Do you think the act of becoming an independent and functioning adult with responsibility is enough of a rite of passage for a man, or is there something to be said about similar ancient rituals? Personally, I think ancient rituals are largely irrelevant because we don't live in ancient times and we don't live in those cultures and we don't live in those anything. And it's a real, I think, mistake that we have in modern times where people are idealizing the past and they want to reconnect with our tribal roots or ancient lineages or all this hyperbole that people get sidetracked on, which are completely beside the point. Because the point is, you have decisions to make, you make different decisions. How do you make different decisions is you look at your driving factors, your motives, your habituation, your tendencies, you look at those things, you look at your goals, you look at your purpose, you look at what gives your life some meaning, what gives your life some purpose. You look at these things and then you make decisions or not. And then what I was saying earlier about business stuff is also completely relevant here, meaning let's say you write out everything you do in a day on the left side of the paper. Waking up to sleeping, you write down everything you do on a day on a regular basis. Then next to that, you write down your goals or your purpose or these types of things. It doesn't have to be fucking grandiose. Like, I want to start a tech startup that's going to change the world and is going to impact billions of people. That might be a bit much. It might be as simple as, you know what, I stay up till 4 a.m. every day. I want to actually start going to bed at like 10 p.m., waking up at a normal, regular time. That's a much more relevant, useful goal. So it can be something as simple as that, or eat regular meals, or exercise on a regular basis, or stop eating sugar, or stop drinking, or stop smoking, or whatever it is. Or learn to be more open and honest and communicative in relationships. Anything. So you write that on the right side, then you look at these two things and do your actions match these things on the right side. If yes, great job. But if you're like most of us, probably not. So then you can say, all right, well, which of these things can I eliminate? Which of these things do not match at all, or which of these things are completely holding me up or preventing me from going in the right direction? For example, I want to be healthier and happier and have more energy. Oh, but I drink 3 beers every night. Well, that's obviously going to need to change. Or I eat 7 slices of pizza every night. So that's basically something that needs to be looked at as well. Has literally nothing to do with ancient rituals or ancient whatever. It's way more simple and direct and straightforward than any of that nonsense that people get sucked into. And all that stuff people are buying into and doing, it's called procrastination. It's called avoiding doing the thing that actually needs to be done. That's it. That's what we can understand it as. Do you know any herbs beneficial for someone with heart disease? Perhaps hawthorn berry, perhaps gynostemma, perhaps, yeah, it's kind of all that comes to mind right now. There's probably loads more, aged garlic extracts, many things, but obviously that's just something to research and come to your own conclusion on. Is there any practice to gently open, widen, or adjust the structure of the jaw even as a formed adult? Not that I am aware of, so I don't know. But I'm sure you can find something online. But yeah, so that's about an hour and some change for me. Thanks for all the questions. Hopefully it's been helpful and has some type of nuggets of information that have been useful. Obviously, of course, if you want to support my channel or support any of the stuff that I do, hopefully you know by now that I have HyperionHerbs.com, which is my company and my main website for over 10 years now. Hopefully that's obvious at this point. If not, definitely check it out. and I'll be tuning in soon with more videos and more live Q&As. So I appreciate everyone showing up and doing the Q&A and providing these good questions. Hopefully there's been some food for thought or something that useful takeaways that you can have. And never underestimate the importance or the power of really small changes. For example, in the past couple weeks, I've had a few people reach out and they had these big laundry list of issues or things they wanted to work on. And they honestly just started making very small changes and had already noticed huge differences. So many of the things that I suggest or mention seem probably very boring, very mundane, very lackluster as compared to a lot of the other people on YouTube, let's say. But oftentimes these are the most actually impactful and important things to focus on, at least in my opinion, which take that for what it's worth. But anyways, I gotta get some lunch. So hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you on the next live stream.